Hey, this is Frank. You're listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. Do you ever feel like you have friends who sometimes just don't get each other? This is a podcast that I recorded with two of my friends, Jake and Noah. We find out the hard ways we struggle to communicate better and sometimes succeed, but sometimes not. For years, the three of us have talked about communication and how it's sometimes easier said than done. Even when we're trying to be understanding, our well-meaning intentions often get lost in translation. We decided to share these conversations with the world. Join us as we find out what happens when three friends try to learn how to really talk to each other.
What's everybody looking at me for?
What are you thinking about?
We took some sort of test like a long time ago, and you guys mentioned that I was like way more industrious than you guys. Do you guys still feel that way?
Test.
Yeah, I think I'm like mid, like 50% something. I think Jake was very low, and you're like 70 or 80 or something.
What was that test? I don't know what that was.
That was the understand myself test. I have a 32 in industriousness. People who are lower in industriousness are likely to be successful in school and in administrative and managerial positions, particularly if they're also less intelligent. If they're highly intelligent, they're likely to be regarded as underachievers. I happen to have this page pulled up right in front of me before you said that. Go to understandmyself.com and log in. Hopefully you used a password manager to remember your password.
Oh, I don't use those.
Maybe you just remember it.
Yeah, I logged in first try. My personality assessment?
I think you just log in and click report.
My work? I found it. Relationship report with Jake Seapock and one other.
Don't read those.
Are you one other?
I think so.
I actually hid my connections.
It may take a few seconds for the PDF to be generated. So a few seconds is actually inaccurate. It takes more than a few, but it did finally open.
So last time my agreeableness was 35. This time my agreeableness was 77. It is drastically different. My extroversion was 84. This time my extroversion is 92. Last time conscientiousness was 66. This time 69. Openness was 98 last time. This time openness is 99. Last time neuroticism was 13. This time neuroticism is 6. Yeah. So the only thing that really drastically changed was agreeableness. The other stuff is pretty close. Like if you look at the high level categories of moderately high, agreeableness went from moderately low to high. Or moderately high, I guess.
And how do you feel about this?
I was surprised by it. The way that I looked at it was essentially that despite who I wanted to be last time, I was probably acting out of a state of repression. And when you repress things, these things, they seep into the external world, whether you know it or not. I was talking to Zach about this a little bit, and he drew a distinction between repression and suppression. Like, now I am far more conscious of the person that I am and the desires that I have, the options on the table. And so I can suppress a behavior that I may or may not want to do, but that is like executive decision making right there in the moment, as opposed to repressing something is like, I don't even know that's an option on the table, and it's seeping out into my life without my knowledge.
Sure.
But I didn't remember a single question on the test from last time. I just answered as openly and honestly as I could. And what was interesting is I was far more likely to answer in an affirmative sort of way to questions about personal gain, which I would have earlier contextualized as like selfishness, something I don't want to be. And this time around, it was like, yeah, I'm out for myself a lot. Yeah, I mean, I care about what other people feel, but I don't go out of my way to care and listen to them as opposed to before. So I don't know what I answered before, but I was surprised to see that agreeableness changed so much. I guess, what are the two factors of agreeableness?
Politeness and compassion, I think. No. Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, that was surprising to me because I would have assumed my politeness to go down as well as potentially my compassion, but it doesn't seem to have. So what are you learning about industriousness, Noah?
Well, I just wondered how that the difference in industriousness plays into how we look at these sorts of systems and task management and stuff differently. That's all.
So let me ask this. Noah, what is your conscientiousness score overall?
50 something? Hold on. 52.
Okay. Mine is 69. What's yours, Frank?
Conscientiousness?
Yeah.
20.
Okay. And then what about industriousness specifically?
44.
Mine's 88.
Wow. Yeah, mine's 32.
My orderliness is 12.
My orderliness is 9.
Mine is 91.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
I didn't think so either. So now after reading about industriousness, like what aspect of that do you feel like plays into systems or not systems?
I don't know. They value work highly and typically want to do something useful. They're dutiful, tend not to put things off. They do not often mess things up. They finish what they start. They do it on schedule. They're frequently figuring out how to accomplish more in less time with fewer resources. It is just how I work. I don't need other systems to help me with it. I think that's really what I'm getting at. It's just how I work. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way. Everybody's different. But when I hear Frank talk about his systems and the way he does things, that seems like noisiness to me. And I think it's interesting when you combine it with the low orderliness. I think I just don't need the structure. I think that's really what it's saying. So it makes sense to me. I feel like I'm very good at jumping around task to task if I need to. Something comes up, I can drop what I'm doing and come back to it without a lot of lost time or thought. It doesn't take me a long time to get into something. Like I just do it because I'm working on getting something done.
Yeah.
I like to get things done. It's interesting. I've had many people who are close to me just go, I don't understand how you get so much done in such a short amount of time. I've had that a lot. I just do things. Yeah. I also think this is why I didn't. Now, this isn't a judgment on the book. I told you I only listened to a little bit of it, but Atomic Habits, I remember thinking when I was listening to it, he's just talking about doing things. Yeah, of course. This is stupid. I'm not saying it's a bad book, but I think that's why I was like, I'm not going to listen to the rest of this. Because he's just talking about doing things. That's what I do every day.
Yeah. Sure. I feel the same way. I just think that my particular interest is in understanding the motivations, the pressures, the interactions between environment, behavior, those types of things. That's why I think it's interesting. But
sure.
What's really fascinating to me, though, is in hearing you, the way that you describe working, I feel like you could be describing me right now. So I'm trying to figure out like what this difference is. And I think I've got a little insight into it. And it is I like to get things done piece or be really efficient. Like I care about efficiency, I guess. But I think that on a whole, I've had people say, how do you get so much done in such a short period of time? I don't do it in a linear way, though. On the whole, if you give me 40 hours, I will accomplish a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
It is not, I accomplished this thing, then that thing, then this thing, then that thing. My brain is like always working on multiple things. And some of those things have nothing to do with work. I can get distracted so freaking easily. And then I will change my attention and I'll put my attention somewhere else. And like, I'm not talking about tasks. I'm talking about, I was working on a project and now I'm over here thinking about consciousness as an idea. Mm-hmm. And my brain will just flow from one thing to another. And all day it just feels like this. And I'm like, oh, I reached a milestone on that task. I guess I'll move on to the next one.
I relate to that. I think I'm similar. Maybe not quite as out there, but I was just saying that I can easily move from one thing to the other. It's not necessarily about, in a linear way, marking things off a list, but I just know what needs to get done and I get it done. And sometimes it's a problem. It becomes a patience problem with other people, especially as a project manager, because I'm like, I'll ask somebody to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, why isn't this done yet? I would have had that done 6 hours ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've had to learn a lot of patience because I know that not everybody works that way.
Yeah, that's what industriousness is. Mm-hmm. It's this sort of automatic clarity about what moves the needle. And you have more than me, and I have more than Jake. And so, like any systems, if you want to improve industriousness, you might put a system in place that would help you to clarify what moves the needle. And that's why I have one. But I don't think it would make a lot of sense for you to add one if it seems really automatic.
Yeah.
So I think that's what industriousness is.
Sure. Yeah. That's why I brought this up because, basically I'm saying we agree. That's why this came up, because I was listening to you guys talk about systems and stuff. And I'm like, I don't need to go through all of that in my head. It just kind of happens.
Yeah. There are probably dangers in high industriousness as well. You alluded to them with just like other people and patients and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's dangers to everything. We're all different.
Yeah.
And so assuming, I suppose, that your way is better, or assuming that just because you can do it, somebody else can, or whatever, there's dangers in that no matter what you excel at.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I find that there is a correlation for me in the times that I am most efficient with the highest levels of depression or just a lack of vive in my life, like a lack of vitality. For instance, let's go back to the Home City Ice days for a second, because I think it was foundational for me.
Jake used to deliver ice.
I was a delivery driver, and I would deliver ice to gas stations and grocery stores and stuff like this. It was a commission-based job, and you had a certain number of stops that you had to hit and fill these guys up and give them what they needed, and you were done. And I would want to get started.
Sometimes.
Yeah. There is the old adage that like the person who is the best at the job only really earns more work. That was definitely the case here. Oh, you're faster? Everybody else has 3 more hours out on the road, so we need you to go pick up this extra work that called in. Anyway, what this would lead to is me waking up earlier and earlier in the morning, me getting on the road earlier and earlier in the morning, and it became this distinction between life and work. And it was, you can't start living until you finished your work, so get it done as soon as possible, as early as possible, as efficiently as possible, and then you can start living earlier in the day. And my God, that destroyed my life, destroyed the quality of my life, because I was not free to live until that work was done. Now I'm sleeping less. Now I'm doing all these things just to try to live more. and it is defeating the entire purpose.
You're listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. In these episodes, we're learning. We don't know what we're doing yet, and sometimes it shows. We think there's beauty in being a beginner, and we're learning from them, so we publish them. So thanks for listening, and rest assured that there will be better Unbecoming Platypus podcasts ahead.
Yeah. Not to change the subject, but I started reading through the orderliness description, and just to kind of go right back to what we were talking about, it says they don't use schedules, lists, or routines, even if they plan, rarely implement those plans, preferring to take things as they come. They let chance determine the outcome. They are not oriented toward detail and do not abide by rules or procedures. People who are low in orderliness don't care for routine and predictability. Their schedules are loose, their time unscheduled, and disruption doesn't bother them. They require constant reminder and supervision to maintain attention and focus, and are too easily distracted. They can, however, tolerate the mess, disruption, and intervening periods of chaos that may accompany a creative endeavor. And I would say that I relate to that pretty heavily. I don't know that I definitely don't need reminder and supervision to maintain attention and focus. I don't relate to that at all. But yeah, the interruptions and not wanting schedules and stuff, I completely relate to.
Yeah.
Same. That's why I have systems for it. But,
Yeah.
I mean, my orderliness is 9.
But I'm very good at I'm very good at focus. Like when I won't focus on a task, I can focus on it and get it done. So I don't really relate to that portion of it.
Yeah, I think it's similar to like when we were talking about the Enneagram. I have this sort of default state, but as I grow and become healthier or what have you, I'm less controlled by it. So like when I read orderliness, it says that very orderly people are uncommonly disturbed and disgusted by mess and chaos. I used to feel bodily anxiety if there was a mess around me. That's no longer true, but I do have a preference, you know?
Sure.
So
I also have a preference. I would prefer my house to be clean and orderly. I just don't care enough about it to do it all the time.
Mm.
Like when I do, every once in a while, I'll like take several hours out of a Saturday afternoon and like really clean, like deep clean my house. Everything. And once it's done, I'm like, oh, this feels really nice. But it doesn't feel nice enough to do it regularly.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I mean, I have a preference about this, but it's not orderliness based. I mean, I don't know what it says in here somewhere. I remember reading it from a long time ago, but essentially you don't. Oh, yeah. People very low in orderliness are not at all disturbed, upset, or disgusted by mess, disorder, or chaos. They just don't notice such things.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they do, they don't at all care. I don't notice them. Unless there's some reason to be situationally aware of my surroundings, I'm not looking in the sink. If it smells bad, I might look in it. Like if something alerts me to that there's a problem there, I'll look at it. But
sure.
I wonder if this is because I have people tell me, like, I don't have any decorations in my house, photos on the wall, whatever. And I don't like when people bring it up, and usually it's my mom or my sister or somebody like that. And they're like, you need to put something up on the walls, put some photos up why are you looking at the walls every time is my thought. Like, why are you looking at the wall? There's other things to look at. Aren't you doing things in your life? I don't look at my wall. Therefore, I don't know that there's nothing on the wall.
Yeah.
I have very high compassion, and this often breaks through other areas. Like orderliness wise, very low. I don't care about pictures on the wall. I don't care about dishes in the sink. I'll clean them when I'm available to do that. If they're in my way, I'll clean them, whatever. But because I care about people, then I'll do it earlier. Like it's the compassion that would break through, not the orderliness ever. And it's the same for industriousness. I'm often like, oh yeah, the thing that would move the needle the most is this. But this person I care about is having a stressful week right now, so I'm not putting pressure on them.
Yes. Yeah.
That kind of thing. So
that's interesting. Yeah, the way that they play like that. I thought it was interesting that my conscientiousness is, moderately high, but my industriousness is low. My orderliness is high. The two kind of go hand in hand and bring that conscientiousness score up. And it's obviously not the industriousness that's doing it.
sure.
I also wonder how much, like I'm looking at the other pieces of the scores, and like, of course, my assertiveness is very high. So I wonder if that plays into some of that industriousness, like I wonder if that plays into some of counteracting some of the low orderliness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, mine's very high too, 88. What is yours?
85 assertiveness.
Mine's 90.
What's yours?
Assertiveness, 85. What's interesting, though, is that when I look back on my life, I used to be a very passive person. I think that being around you two for the last couple of decades has been like, hey, if you want to be heard, you got to get your voice in there. Start talking.
I can see that. Yeah, I feel less assertive than ever, and that's not really true, but it is. I just I'm very picky about what I feel like sharing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty assertive, like ideologically. I'm like, oh, that's the wrong way to look at that. But am I going to tell someone that? Unless it's going to help them, I don't think so.
I think that politeness is probably a pretty big offset of assertiveness. Because I remember reading on the politeness factor here that they often get run over by other people. And I think that my politeness is, well, it's currently 65. When I was younger, it was probably like 90. Like there are certain things you don't say. I feel like as that assertiveness has come up, the politeness necessarily has to go down. I have to worry a little bit less about what's right or what I should say if I'm going to assert myself in the world.
Sure.
What's your politeness?
At the 0th percentile, if you were one of 100 people in a room, you would be lower in politeness than 99 of them and higher in politeness than 0 of them.
That's pretty low. Mine's 16, and that's pretty low. But
yeah, I just don't value it as a thing. I'm very compassionate. That's 61, moderately high. But politeness is never something that made sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I read about this one, and I thought it was interesting because it says that people high in politeness essentially don't want other people to have to feel negative emotions, which is really fascinating from like the Enneagram perspective.
It feels like Zach will be 100, our friend Zach. I don't know if he is. That's a judgment on him, but it feels like the quintessential like value of a 9 in the Enneagram. Just like, oh, I don't want to jack with anyone's life. Like,
I want to make peace. Well, I think that if I look at it as a 7, negative emotions are the worst thing that you can experience. I was always running away from that. And therefore, good, positive emotions being somehow associated with the lack of negative emotions is the highest value. So like my politeness comes from never wanting anybody else to feel negative things. As I have healed that, as I have come into a more full understanding of being an emotional being, I see the positive aspects of negative feelings. And I think that has lowered the politeness, increased the assertiveness, and been like, hey, this is going to hurt, but I need you to know this thing.
Yeah. I have no problem with kindness. I wouldn't skip the truth element just to be liked or something. That's
Do you
what
see politeness as an impediment to truth?
I think it can be, for sure.
Yeah, I could see that.
If you're feigning interest that you don't have, that seems like an impediment to the truth.
Sure.
Maybe if you're feigning interest that you believe you will have, if you just execute on this a little while, then maybe it's worth it. Maybe that's not like coming from a place of deception. It's not that I'm not polite. It's just not something that I thought was important, I guess. I'm kind. I care a lot about people. I'm compassionate, but I'm going to tell them the truth.
Sure. I think that is compassionate, depending on your perspective.
There are dangers to being very low in politeness.
There are dangers to being very high. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Are we all low in neuroticism?
Nope.
What's yours?
61.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Why?
Just think of, if you read the neuroticism thing, measure of general sensitivity to negative emotions such as pain, sadness, irritable or defensive anger, fear, anxiety. I don't know. That just doesn't seem like you to me.
Yeah. I'm 47 on that, which is typical or average, I guess. But
you and I had a similar conversation not long ago where I was like, I don't often see this softer, vulnerable side of you.
sure.
And so I perceive you to be this very solid, stoic rock of a thing. And what that leads to is my assertiveness kicks in and I don't care as much about politeness. And I may say something that totally hurts you, but I don't see the response of that. So
Sure.
It's interesting to me that Noah also would imagine that sort of low volatility. It's because you don't always see like the effect of the cause.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my volatility is, and I don't know, I took this a long time ago, and I like, if these scores change over time, I think it's a lot different now. But
Sure.
There's some question about whether you should ever take them again or whether they can change over time. Who knows? But it feels like 72 feels a little high. That's because I've done a lot of work to normalize my response to volatility. I think when I was younger, I had a lot of belief that you should be happy. This is like most humans should be happy most of the time. And then when I had a day where I really wasn't happy, it was very hard. Now I don't find happiness to be like a state I really pursue. I like it when it's there.
Yeah.
And when it's not there, if it's a very bad day, I also like that. I sort of enjoy the lows and the highs of life, sort of. And
Yeah.
I also know that with pain, like there comes a subsequent cycle of it being relieved. So I don't know. I've had a lot of experience with volatility, so I'm better at not letting it affect me than I used to be.
I have this question in my mind. I've tried to get rid of shoulds in my life, honestly. I don't think they really serve me that well. But I think that I would attribute my low volatility to a very quick processing speed of things. And for me, feeling something negative has always triggered an invalidation of that emotion. Well, you don't need to be sad because look at the reality of the situation. Zoom out real quick. It's actually here. Look, here's a silver lining to this. And that's been the defensive mechanism to negative feelings. And that's kept me at an equilibrium for a long time. So through this process of trying to say, okay, it's fine to process the emotion. It's fine to process it quickly, but don't tell yourself you're not feeling it. That's been a change in me to be able to say that person said something. It did hurt me. It did give me like this heat in my body that made me feel angry. And no, I shouldn't be angry. I misunderstood what they said. But before, Jake would have said, you can't make me angry. That's not true. You can make me angry. That doesn't mean that I have to act in that anger or even feel it for longer than 2 seconds. But that distinction has been important in my life.
Yeah.
What's your volatility or your neuroticism, Noah?
Which one do you want? Volatility is 21.
Okay.
And neuroticism is 14.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in this in general. My neuroticism is 6. It says my withdrawal is a 3, and I don't know if that's true. I would have to read more about what withdrawal means, because it says individuals exceptionally low in withdrawal virtually never suffer from or are impeded by anticipatory anxiety. I used to be so anxious from an anticipatory standpoint. I'm not really anymore. Yeah. Okay. So what withdrawal means is like not doing something because of the discomfort. So they are extremely unlikely to avoid or withdraw in the face of the unknown or unexpected. That is true. I will jump into something no matter how scary or whatever it is.
Yeah, mine's 47, and I think it's right. Sometimes feel sad, lonesome, disappointed, grief-stricken, not too deeply, not for too long. Handle on new, uncertain, unexpected, threatening, or complex situations quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Seems fine. What about openness?
I'm exceptionally high. That one's 99 for me.
85.
71st.
It's all pretty high on that one.
Intellect is 89.
Mine's 92.
97.
What about aesthetics?
38.
Real quick, it says on note, do not confuse the personality aspect of intellect with IQ. Intellect is a measure of interest in abstract ideas. Okay, yeah. Essentially, while IQ is a measure of processing speed, verbal ability, working memory. I think that one's weird because that threw me off just nominally.
Sure. Yeah. It's a how weird are you score.
Oh, yeah.
Not a how
Nice.
smart are you. Yeah.
Did you move to aesthetics?
Yeah. I'm a 63.
That's weird. I would think you would have pictures on your wall at a 63.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, maybe I don't understand aesthetics. I'm 97 on that one. People who are exceptionally high in aesthetics love beauty. They must have an outlet for their creative ability or simply cannot thrive.
38.
Well, that's really cool, though. That I guess like there's no like value to having higher or lower, but it's interesting to me when people subvert expectations. Like you are in your life chasing a lot of creative expression right now, which would seem to contrast with a lower score on aesthetics.
Yeah, I could see that being true.
But you're doing it not to create beauty. I mean, we talked about that before too.
Yeah.
It feels like worthwhile work to you. It feels of value.
Yeah. I don't hate beauty, but it's not the metric I'm seeking to hit.
Yeah. I
Every once
love
in a
it.
while, everyone looks at me and I don't know why.
Did we talk about all these things?
I think so.
Really?
I really am though. Like it's interesting because as you were talking about like paintings on the wall or whatever, it is very low priority for me. if I did not have easy access to decor, I would be the guy in the beige apartment with a chair in the middle of the room and nothing else. That said, I a year ago moved into my own place, and Jessica is an artist and had a whole bunch of old paintings that weren't really doing anything. I was like, hey, I'm going to take these. And my room has been furnished with those pieces ever since. And I do prefer, once again, to have that. It does create a mood for me. It does create a hominess. I do notice a bodily difference in relaxing in an empty apartment as opposed to something that has what I would refer to as like character or stories, history on the walls.
Yeah, it's not that I can't appreciate. I can be in spaces that are very well decorated and go, oh, this is very nice, but it doesn't serve any real purpose for me, which is why I don't do it. If it would change my life in any way, I would probably put effort into making my home feel more decorated than it is.
Do you know that it wouldn't? Let's say it's free. Interior decorator comes in, turns your house into like this really cool bachelor pad. Do you feel differently when you walk in the door?
Maybe for a short period of time, but I don't think over the long term. No.
Interesting.
I just don't spend time in my house looking at my surroundings.
Sure.
That doesn't mean they have zero impact on me, but it just isn't. It's just not something that's in my consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you bought new furniture. You didn't really want to, but you did. And one of the things you were talking about is if I'm going to have people over. Mm-hmm. So if your house is like well decorated, you've got everything you need to, have a party or whatever. Are you more likely to have people over? Are you more likely to socialize? Is that more likely to change things in your life?
No, I've had nobody over.
Yeah.
And it's all functional. It's all functional.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't decorate. Buying furniture is literally, can someone sit down?
Sure.
Not how does it look?
Yeah.
Having a coffee table is there a place for somebody to set a drink on?
Yeah.
Not, does the space feel empty or less decorated?
Yeah. It was something I was surprised by when I moved in or out. And, at first I was just sleeping on a twin bed that I didn't own. And it felt like after going from living with the homiest person to ever exist, who cares so much about the way that everything makes you feel, to this empty space, I went, oh, I think I actually want that in my life. And I went out and I picked out the bed frame that I wanted, and I put those paintings on the wall, and I bought pillows, not for laying on, but because of the way that they looked and made the space feel. And I was like, this is really surprising. I think I like gray and orange together. I didn't know that. That's kind of weird. It was very surprising to me.
Yeah. Sounds
You're
surprising.
Such a feely person.
Yeah, man. I was just cultivating that feeling of home.
What's your extroversion score?
Something ridiculous.
Like 99.9. I'm speaking for Jake, not myself.
Yeah. It's funny whenever I read that, though, because I've definitely know people that I would put way higher on extroversion than me. Wick, for example. I see people like that and I go, oh, wow, no, I'm a very introverted person.
Mine's a 53.
Mine's 66.
Interesting.
Is extroversion the last one on the list? I can't.
No.
It's the second major category.
Oh, that would explain it.
I can't find it. Okay, I found it.
Yeah, extroversion for me is a 92.
No, it's a measure of general sensitivity to positive emotions such as happy or hope, happy, hope, joy, anticipation, and approach, particularly in social situations.
Yeah. It's sort of that Family Guy thing. What's his name?
Giggity?
Giggity.
That's not his name, but
His name's
Quagmire.
Giggity. Quagmire, yeah.
It's made up of enthusiasm and assertiveness. Which do you think is higher for me, and which do you think is lower?
I think enthusiasm might be very, very high for me. I'm a 7, known as the enthusiast.
I made a mean joke about you to Kate. Yeah.
You were actually probably making fun of her when you did it.
Yeah, well, she took it personally.
Good.
Yeah, I liked it. She said something. We were just talking about life in general, and I told her, I think I talked about being divorced or something, and she said, I don't remember her exact words, but she referred to it as, even when we go through negative things like that, and I'm like, well, I don't necessarily see it as negative. It just is what happened. And she's like, oh, you sound like Jake. And I went, yeah, but I mean it.
Nice. Yeah, my enthusiasm is a 92.
She literally went, oh.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think these tests are helpful in figuring out what areas you can improve upon or what might be important to you that you didn't realize. Or
yeah.
Mine says enthusiasm is very low.
What's your number?
10.
Yeah, it's 30 something for me.
Quiet and unexcitable.
Rarely excitable, not particularly easy to get to know, and not known for their talkative nature.
Very high in enthusiasm are uncommonly excitable, happy, easy to get to know. They will talk very rapidly about everything. They laugh or giggle frequently. They must be around other people almost all the time, and they love parties.
Yep. They tend to prefer solitude. Yeah.
Cool, guys. We done here?
Do we have do we have some sort of summary or?
I tried to do one.
Yeah.
Oh, when?
Just a minute ago. So yeah, these kind of tests can really help you to determine areas of your life to focus on, or that may be weaknesses you didn't know about, strengths.
Yeah, I totally see that because, I don't know, some things that might be surprising, like the industriousness thing. I was surprised that it was low, and it made me look at that a little bit differently and say, what comprises this, and what sort of things can I change my system to help me be more industrious? I would like to have that in my life. Another way that I think that they're very helpful, though, is understanding other people. I told you a couple of weeks ago, I was like, hey, I see you as a highly compassionate person with a low conscientiousness score. I don't take this personally, but could you please do the dishes more? And I don't know, I felt like using that vocabulary actually did help me to see you as who you are, instead of being like, oh, he's not doing the dishes, he doesn't care about what's important to me. And hearing that own voice that's projecting in my own head helps me to create that empathic bridge.
I miss having a dishwasher. That is the house that I rent doesn't have one, obviously. And that's the one tool that I miss the most, because I used a lot of like shaker cups and stuff. I drink electrolytes. I drink protein shakes, and like those specifically even more than like dishes. I don't use that many dishes overall, but man, I wish I had a dishwasher to run like once a day or every other day. It'd be so much easier than having to wash all those stupid cups. If you guys are interested in Understand Myself test, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Nice.
You can just type Understand Myself into Google or your address bar. Just put .com at the end of it. If you put it in the address bar.
You could go to www.understandmyself.com and take the test.
And if you want to read my report specifically, you can go to iasdocuments.as/API/retrieve report !token.
Hey, it's Frank again. Thanks for listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. You can also check us out online at theunbecomingplatypus.com. We hope these conversations inspire you to improve your communication skills and deepen your connections with your own friends and loved ones. Until next time, this has been the Unbecoming Platypus podcast.